The wind howled like a banshee, clawing at the corrugated metal of my makeshift shack. A blizzard, fiercer than any I'd seen in my years wandering the wastes of the Commonwealth, raged outside. This wasn't just any snowstorm, this was an ice storm. A mod some pre-war tech head had cooked up, I remembered reading on a dusty terminal. Now, it was my reality, a bone-chilling torment that tested the limits of my survival. The digital readout on my Pip-Boy flickered, -40 degrees Celsius. Without the fusion-powered heater, scavenged from a pre-war military outpost and jury-rigged to my shelter, I'd be frozen solid within the hour. The irony wasn't lost on me. A wasteland survivor, hardened by radiation and raiders, brought low by the cold. I huddled deeper into my heavy coat, the layers of scavenged wool and leather offering meager comfort. The ice storm mod wasn't just about the cold, it was about the resources, the adaptations, the fight to stay alive. I needed a better base, a reliable power source, and a consistent food supply. My current hovel, perched precariously on the ruins of a collapsed highway overpass, was barely cutting it. My gaze fell on the schematic pinned to the wall, the Winterhold shelter. A blueprint I'd painstakingly pieced together from fragments of pre-war data. It was ambitious, bordering on insane, but it was my only shot. A multi-layered structure, insulated with scavenged foam, and reinforced with salvaged steel, powered by a repurposed wind turbine and geothermal generator, and featuring a hydroponics bay for sustainable food production. The biggest challenge was the geothermal generator. It required a specific kind of drill, a heavy-duty model designed to bore through frozen ground. I knew of one, rumored to be buried beneath the ruins of an old mining town called Blackwood, but Blackwood was deep in raider territory, a place where death was as common as dust. Days blurred into a cycle of scavenging, repairing, and shivering. I ventured out during the lulls in the storm, clad in my heavily modified T-45 power armor, its fusion core repurposed to power a heating system. The armor was cumbersome, but it was the only way to survive, even brief expeditions into the blizzard. I salvaged wood for repairs, hunted mutated creatures for meager meat, and scoured frozen ruins for anything that could be used or traded. I managed to amass a small stockpile of supplies, a few fusion cells, scraps of metal, some vegetable seeds, and a battered water purifier. But the Winterhold shelter demanded more. It demanded Blackwood. The journey to Blackwood was a nightmare. The ice storm raged relentlessly, obscuring the landscape and transforming familiar landmarks into treacherous white voids. Visibility was near zero, and the biting wind howled through the gaps in my armor, seeking any exposed skin. Mutated wolves, driven mad by hunger and cold, stalked the frozen wastes. I fought them off with my trusty combat shotgun, each blast echoing eerily through the desolate landscape. Reaching Blackwood was a triumph, but the town was a frozen tomb. Buildings were buried under drifts of snow, and the air was thick with the stench of decay and the chilling presence of raiders. I moved cautiously, my senses on high alert. The raider camp was a ramshackle collection of tents and barricades, built around a ruined factory. They were hardy bastards, the raiders, adapted to the harsh conditions. They wore scavenged furs and crude armor, their faces gaunt and hardened by the cold. They saw me coming, the lumbering figure in power armor, and they charged, howling like the wolves I'd left behind. The battle was brutal. My power armor absorbed most of their attacks, but the raiders were relentless. They swarmed me, hacking and slashing with rusty axes and makeshift blades. I returned fire with my shotgun and a salvaged laser rifle, cutting them down one by one. Finally, only one raider remained, a hulking brute wielding a sledgehammer. He charged, his eyes blazing with fury. I raised my laser rifle, but it was out of energy. He swung the sledgehammer, and it connected with my armor, sending a shockwave through my body. I stumbled, momentarily disoriented. He raised the hammer again, ready to deliver the final blow. Adrenaline surged through me. I dropped the laser rifle and drew my combat knife. As he swung the hammer, I lunged forward, dodging the blow and plunging the knife into his throat. He gasped, his eyes widening in disbelief, and collapsed into the snow. I stood there, panting, my armor dented and scarred, but still functional. I had survived. I had won. Finding the drill was another challenge. The factory was a labyrinth of frozen corridors and collapsed machinery. I searched for hours, dodging booby traps and fighting off mutated rodents. Finally, I found it, buried beneath the pile of rubble, the heavy-duty geothermal drill, encased in ice. Hauling the drill back to my shelter was an ordeal. It was heavy and cumbersome, and the ice storm showed no signs of abating. I used a combination of brute strength and scavenged robotics to drag it across the frozen wasteland. Back at my shelter, I worked tirelessly to construct the winter-hold shelter. The geothermal generator was the key. I spent days calibrating the drill, connecting the generator to the repurposed wind turbine, and laying the foundations for the hydroponics bay. The geothermal generator rumbled to life, sending a surge of heat through the shelter. The wind turbine spun furiously, generating a steady stream of power. The hydroponics bay, dimly lit by scavenged fluorescent bulbs, began to sprout life. The winter-hold shelter was more than just a building, it was a symbol of hope, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. It was a place where I could survive, not just exist. I spent my days tending to the hydroponics bay, growing vegetables and purifying water. I scavenged for resources, refining my armor and weapons. I even started experimenting with new technologies, inspired by the pre-war data I had salvaged. The ice storm still raged, but it no longer held the same fear. I had adapted. I had overcome. I had built a home in the heart of the wasteland. One day, I saw a figure approaching the winter-hold shelter, a lone traveler struggling through the snow. He was bundled in furs, his face weathered and gaunt. He looked exhausted, desperate. I hesitated for a moment, remembering the raiders of Blackwood. But then I saw the desperation in his eyes, the plea for help. I opened the door to the winter-hold shelter and beckoned him inside. "Welcome," I said, "to Winterhold. Come in, warm yourself. You are safe here." The traveler looked at me, his eyes filled with gratitude. He stepped inside, and the door closed behind him, shutting out the howling wind and the biting cold. Inside, the winter-holed shelter glowed with warmth and light, a beacon of hope in the frozen wasteland.